Is it possible to make pasta from 100% freshly milled wheat that actually is delicious, but also doesn't look funky and maybe even a little bit like store-bought pasta? Yes, it is, but there is a secret to it, and you're gonna wanna stay tuned to find out what it is. Hey y'all, welcome back to Grains and Grit. My name is Felicia, and on this channel, I teach you all about real whole grains, all from a biblical perspective. I teach you how to be milling grains, why you should be milling grains, why you should be consuming whole grains, how to use them, so on and so forth. Okay, so this is a much requested video, and that is pasta with 100% freshly milled wheat. And I have to say, I've experimented with this quite a lot, and the pasta for me always it just didn't turn out right. Certain wheats just made them look almost like kind of grayish looking. It didn't look appealing, even though it may taste okay. It just didn't look great. And you know, we kind of have this expectation of what pasta should look like. So I definitely set out to figure out how we can do this. And the secret is the type of wheat that you use. Yes, my friends, it all comes down to the wheat. And the wheat that I found that works the best with pasta is Corazon. You may actually know it as kamut. And so that is the grain that we will be using. If you don't have some for pasta, you definitely need it. And the reason why I like Corazon is it gives you a nice soft dough. It works well, but also something with Corazon just gives you an almost store-bought pasta look. It just looks like normal pasta. And so your kids aren't going to reject it because it looks like what they've already been given. But on top of that, it is absolutely delicious. It is such a flavorful pasta. And you may be wondering why Corazon and not say wheat durum, but fun fact, Corazon is actually related to wheat durum. So it totally works out fine. Corazon is actually one of my favorite ancient grains to work with, so much so that I actually did a course all about Corazon. I dive deep and give you some of my best tips and tricks and recipes using Corazon. So if you haven't checked out that course yet, it will be in the description box below. And if I'm able to, I will link it up here as well. So without further ado, let's get this started. All right, so step one is you're gonna want to make a whole lot of room. And actually, I really like this bag, by the way. It's a Teddy Blake bag, real Italian leather. They sent this to me, and frankly, I really like it. Link will be down below. But bottom line is you're gonna need a ton of room for pasta. And then of course we need our grain mill. This is the Como grain mill, aka Miss Katerina. And I'm using my Bosch Universal Mixer Plus, aka Miss Betsy, to help me mix up and knead the dough. And then you're definitely gonna wanna need an apron, and all of these will be listed below. And then of course, beloved Corazon. And then we're gonna mill some up. Now, for those of you who are always on me about, oh, Felicia, I wish you weighed your grains, you will be happy to know that we will be weighing them. Now, I didn't weigh it before I milled, and this is why. Basically, the recipe for pasta is stupid easy. For every 100 grams of flour, you need 1 egg. That's it. That's just the basic recipe. So I'm actually going to be doing 300 grams of flour. So I'm going to need 3 eggs. So what you see here is I'm actually measuring out the 300 grams of flour, but you're also going to want to need some extra for dusting the pasta and things like that, which you will see later. So if you're just going to weigh the wheat berries, make sure you do a little bit extra for milling because you're going to need some extra flour. But as far as the actual dough, I'm weighing out here 300 grams of freshly milled Corazon, and then we're just going to dump that in our mixer. You can do this by hand, but this part, I find it's just easier to do in a mixer. And then we're just going to add in the 3 eggs. Again, 300 grams of flour is what you see here, to 3 eggs. These are just regular large eggs. And if you've actually watched pasta videos online before, and especially if you see like the Italian grandmas, you'll notice that their pasta is yellow. That's usually from the eggs, and they're using like a whiter flour. You're going to have more of a buttery look with this pasta because of the Corazon. It's just the color of the Corazon, which is just beautiful. You may have noticed you're also going to need some water. And as this dough is mixing, whether you're doing this by hand or in the mixer, you're going to want to add in start with 1 tablespoon of water at a time. Basically, you're just needing to add enough water until the dough just starts to be able to clump together. So for here, I just only needed like 2 tablespoons. And as you can see here, I'm able to just clump it together. It's still very grainy. It still feels dry. And I rather go a little less on the water at this point than too much. So that's enough for me right now. And now I'm just going to knead the dough in the mixer. I'm going to knead it for about 9 minutes, but I am going to finish it up by hand because I just prefer to do it that way. But in the mixer right here, let's just do 9 minutes. If you're kneading by hand, just keep kneading by hand, and you're going to want to get some tips in a bit whenever I start kneading it by hand myself. Okay, so the 9 minutes are up. And as you can see, this still does not look like a really nice smooth dough, but it is coming together. And from here, I now like to take it over and start kneading it and working with it by hand because I want to feel the dough. I want to actually feel how it is. And I just find that you just got to do that part by hand. But at least we got like the hardest part out of the way. So I can already tell that we still have flour bits around. So I'm just going to go ahead and add a little bit more water, and then we're going to remove this from the the bowl. Now keep that water by hand. So as you can see here, this dough still ain't looking great. It's still a little bit in pieces, still a bit dry. So I'm just going to knead this dough, keep working this dough, and you can see how it's even sticking onto the counter. I am not adding more flour at this point. Don't add more flour. Just slightly, just wet your hands. I like to dip my hands and fingers into the water that I have here. And then use that to continue kneading this. And you're going to knead this until it's a nice smooth ball, and it actually is going to start looking a bit shiny, which unfortunately it's very difficult to show, at least on my camera. But the key is here, as you can see, it's still sticking to the counter a bit. So I'm just going to keep kneading. As I knead, we're working and developing the gluten. And as I knead, it's going to also start picking up that dough more. So again, I'm not adding any flour. I just keep watering my hands like you see here. And then we're working water into the dough, and that's going to help the dough to become less sticky. I know that might seem like it won't, but it will make it less sticky. It's going to pick up that flour the dough from the counter. And we're just going to keep doing this. This did take me probably an additional 3 to 4 minutes, depends on how rigorous you are at kneading. And then you just keep wetting those hands, keep kneading it until it's just nice and smooth dough. And here it is. This is a few minutes later. You can see how I can stick my finger in it. It's able to make a bit of a indentation, as you will. But I still kind of want to work it. It's still just not quite feeling as soft and smooth as I'm wanting. So you still want a bit of a slightly tacky dough, but the bottom line is you're really looking for the smoothness of the dough and a little bit of shininess to it. And again, if it's not shiny, you just need some more water and keep working that in until it's good. So again, you don't want it to look dry, but it's also not it's not falling apart or anything. This will feel more dense of a dough than a typical bread dough. So if you've made like my simple yeast bread loaf recipe, this is not going to be as soft of a dough as that is. It will be a little bit more dense, but still maintain a softness. So we are done here. As you can see, it's got that little bit of a shininess to it. I can poke it and it's not sticking like crazy to my hand, but it is slightly tacky. So again, to show you again what I'm looking for is you can see it still wants to stick a little bit to the counter, but not like insane. And if it's just too insane, again, water, keep kneading it. That's why I keep seeing me do that here a little bit. But again, it's going to be slightly tacky. It's just going to take practice. But here's an important part is you now need to let the dough rest. Now, good news, this is something you can do in advance. So you can do this even like a couple days beforehand and just keep it in your fridge. And then you can use it straight from the fridge when you're ready to roll it out. But you need to let it rest for at least 20 minutes if you're going to go ahead and do this. And that can be resting in the fridge or outside of the fridge. It really doesn't matter. Now, surprise! I actually have an Arkarskum mixer, the Ankh that I can never pronounce. I haven't done a video about this, you haven't missed it. But bottom line is I also have the pasta attachments to these. Now, I just have the roller attachment and then the fettuccine attachment. And I will do a video about this mixer later. You'll just have to wait. But bottom line is I'm using it now for the pasta attachments. So sorry, I'm totally leaving y'all hanging for those who've watched this for a long time. But bottom line is this is where you need to set up however you are rolling this pasta out, whether it be by hand, with a manual roller, but I have these attachments. You just want to make sure that it's on here securely. And so now we're just going to remove the dough from our plastic wrap. And this is the part that really just takes the longest, rolling out the dough. This, just park it here, y'all. It's going to take some time. But we're going to go ahead and just divide up the dough into more manageable pieces. This is basically, I work with it in thirds to start off with. And you're going to want to keep this flour nearby. So as you can see here, after all this resting, it should be softer of a dough. It feels amazing. It feels like a soft Play-Doh, like brand new Play-Doh. That's what we're going for. And I'm going to go ahead and flour it here. You do just want to keep flouring this a lot, because otherwise it's going to really stick and it's not going to roll out well. And it's going to be a big, like, doughy mess, which you don't want. So you're going to start on your thickest setting. For me, that's a 0 with these pasta rollers. And we're just going to start rolling it through. I have to admit, having these attachments to a mixer is so much easier than having a manual roller, because with a manual roller, I feel like I need like 3 hands, and here I can do it with 2. So after that first roll, you can see here, I just folded it up in thirds. We're just dusting it again. Each time you send it through the roller, you want to dust that again to make sure nothing is sticking. And on this setting, I like to roll it through maybe 2 to 4 times. It kind of just all depends, but so long as it's looking good, you just gradually move it up to the next level. So I go from 0 to 1, and you gradually work on making this pasta thinner. So I don't always keep folding it up in thirds like this. I just do this to start off with, but you just keep sending it through each time. Again, as it goes to the smaller, thinner settings, I start only running it through maybe 1 to maybe 3 times at the most. Bottom line is, as you do this, you're going to know what good pasta looks like. You're just wanting the dough to still be smooth. You don't want it to be sticking together, and you don't want it to be falling apart, which we'll get to troubleshooting methods in a bit. But here we go. As it starts getting longer, I just cut it in half. Work with smaller sections. Just think about the size of like the noodles that you are wanting, or the size of the sheet of dough that you are wanting. It just really all depends. But for me, it's just easier to work in these sizes that's no more than about 12 inches long. But we're just going to keep rolling through here, y'all, and we'll get to troubleshooting tips in a bit. Okay, so I was able to get it to about the 6 or the 7 setting, but you know when the pasta is rolled enough where basically it's just a little bit see-through. You can kind of see your hands through that. And whenever it is done and it's rolled out as thin as it needs to be, you just need to set it aside and work with the rest of the dough. So we're going to pause real quick to talk about Corazon and the wheat that I'm using. The Corazon I'm using is actually from Grand Teton Ancient Grains, which is my go-to place now for ancient grains. They are the responsible for bringing these beloved ancient grains here, specifically einkorn, for making einkorn more available here in the United States. They started doing this a while ago. I actually did an interview with Jade. If you haven't watched that yet, it is absolutely fascinating. But Grand Teton Ancient Grains is the sponsor of this video. And what is so great about Grand Teton is that they are organic farmers. They are lovers of ancient grains, but they are regenerative farmers, which means that they're really, really taking care of their soil to make sure that your grains are the most nutrient dense as possible. But on top of that, they also test their grains for lead, for glyphosate, all of those bad things that you just don't want in your food, making sure that you have safe and clean and nutritious ancient grains. They're also a mill, so for those of you who may not have a grain mill yet, you can get freshly milled flour from them, which is wonderful. Another thing that they have recently come out with is pasta. Now their pasta actually is from einkorn, but it's 100% freshly milled einkorn that they make pasta. I've actually tried it. It is delicious. Just little note is their spaghetti with, I think being made with the einkorn, the spaghetti noodles did kind of fall apart whenever I cooked them, but it really didn't matter because especially kids are eating them anyway. So it kind of helped that it was in smaller pieces, but other than that, I do recommend the pasta, especially if you're unable to make it or you just need some on hand for those times that you just don't have time to make pasta. And I was really excited whenever they started giving us this option for buying pasta from an ancient grain that's freshly milled. So if you haven't checked out Grand Teton, you really are missing out. You just need to go to grainsandgrit.com/Teton. Tell them I sent you, and thank you so much to Grand Teton Ancient Grains for sponsoring this video. Okay, so we're gonna keep rolling this out on 6 times the speed because again, this takes a while, but let's talk about some troubleshooting tips. So your biggest thing here, as you're rolling the dough out, if you start basically seeing where things are just falling apart, you can't get it thin enough, it keeps falling apart. There are a few things you need to consider here. One, first of all, just make sure that you're accurate, you are dusting each side of the pasta sheet before you roll it through, because it may be falling apart just because it's getting stuck in your roller. And you'll kind of know that because it's going to act like it's being stuck in your roller. And that's going to cause it to tear and fall apart. Another thing is that it may not have just been kneaded or rested sufficiently before you did this. So you just, again, want to make sure that you have a nice smooth, that dough is feeling smooth like a Play-Doh type dough before you start to roll it out. But I think the biggest issue is just making sure that you're flouring it enough before you start rolling it through to make sure it's not tearing. And then again, that resting time after you've kneaded is very crucial. So that's just the biggest thing I think with pasta is the falling apart or it's getting stuck in the roller. There's some tips for you. All right, so we did it. We got it all rolled out, and now we're going to switch attachments. Now, this is the fettuccine roller that I have. There's also like a spaghetti roller, but I kind of wanted the fettuccine. I figured it was cool. So again, just make sure that this is screwed in correctly. Again, if you just want to do like lasagna, you already have your sheets, or ravioli, you got your sheets, you're ready to go. But I find this is a tip that I got from Becky on Acre Homestead, who is making pasta. And she said that it actually works better when you're sending it through the cutter like this after it is dried for a little bit. And I have to agree. So that first sheet that I did, it's been about like a good 20-30 minutes since I first did it, and it did dry a little bit and made it a little bit stiffer. So I still dust it with some flour, and I found that it cut really easily. So I do suggest that if you're doing less than this and maybe those sheets didn't have as long of a time to sit there and dry, let it dry for maybe like 15-20 minutes just to help it cut easier. And you can cut by hand if you need to, but again, technology, it's wonderful, y'all. It really makes the job a whole lot easier. So again, you also want to make sure that you're dusting the flour before sending it through again, because that keeps the noodles dusted and keep them from sticking together in a big ball of dough and thus wasting all the time that you just did. So that's the biggest key whenever you are cutting the noodles, is make sure everything is staying floured sufficiently to keep things from sticking together. One thing I forgot to mention is while you're cutting the noodles, do be sure you're already getting some water to boil. You're going to want a large pot. Don't fill it up more than halfway with water, whatever pot you're using. And you want to get it, just salt the water, just a good amount of salt in the water, and get that coming to a boil, because cutting the noodles is way faster than me rolling out all this dough. And so you want to go ahead and have nice hot water to go so you're not wasting time in the kitchen. But here we are with our noodles. They look absolutely beautiful. And we're going to add these into our pot of salted boiling water. Now, the beauty of fresh pasta is it takes way less time to cook, about half the time than dried pasta. So this usually took only about like 4 minutes for all of this to cook. Again, make sure that the water is already at a sufficient rolling boil, and you're just going to dump all this pasta in. Again, making sure it's really floured well, because otherwise you don't want it to stick and clump together as a big dough ball in the pot of water. So I just like to stir it up like I do with pasta to make sure nothing is sticking, and it was doing absolutely just fine. And the way that I find that fresh pasta, if it's done, besides the time, it's usually about anywhere from 3 to 4 minutes for me, but I just taste it. I just taste it to see how it is, and you'll know by the texture and the taste. I mean, I think we've all had pasta. We all know what it should taste and feel like in the mouth, but that's what you're looking for, is I just taste it to see how it is. And of course, when it's done cooking, you're going to want to drain it, but here it is. Ta-da! And time to plate it, y'all. So these are homemade meatballs that I have, homemade marinara sauce because it's the best. And now we're going to plate it. So this is whole grain pasta, y'all. You may find that you don't need as much pasta in order to be full, but we got the pasta. We're adding on some meatballs. These are wonderful meatballs. And of course, some marinara sauce. And then, what is Italian cooking without freshly grated Parmesan, right on top. Yes, y'all, it is a necessity, ask any Italian. So we're just dusting, we're just grating some freshly grated Parmesan on top. And there it is. It is beautiful. Y'all, you probably wouldn't know that that's whole grain pasta right there. I mean, look at it. Look at it. We're going to get even a closer look up to it because it's just so pretty and we have to admire it. But it's that beautiful buttery look, and it's not a grainy type texture. So here's kind of more of a close up to it. I've done pasta where it just looks grainy and gray and just sad. Sad. This is not sad pasta, y'all. This is happy pasta, and it is delicious, and there it is. All right, that's it, y'all. I have no pasta here to show you because my family absolutely inhaled it. Now, do know if you're looking for the meatball recipe and the marinara sauce, that is actually for my grainies. So all of my grainies out there in the grainy bunch, be sure to check those out. Those recipes are listed for you on my website in your member portal. And also, if you're wanting to know more recipes using Corazon, you're gonna wanna check out these rolls right here because they're literally the best rolls ever that you will have. And it's made with this beloved Corazon wheat. As always, I hope that y'all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next week. Bye.